Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the incredible connections they create. I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen.
And I'm Lisa Lisson, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin? We are your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's head out on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of togetherness.
Today we're doing something really fun. We're looking at old newspaper food sections from the years that Ashley and I were born. We've explored vintage papers, and fall menu suggestions are, well, interesting, shall we say. Some are quite familiar, others are a bit strange, and a few had us wondering who thought that was a good idea.
Listen, they needed content for the newspapers. They didn't have the internet, so maybe some stretches were involved.
Right. No food blogs back in these times. This was all in the newspaper, right?
Lisa, I'd love to know, what were some of the fall menu ideas that you dug up from 1965?
Okay, so 1965. What I was seeing back as I was perusing the newspapers for this, is really heavy into what we would consider traditional types of fall foods, seasonal foods in many parts of the U.S., particularly apples. So apples played a prominent role in a lot of the recipes I was seeing. Interesting, I didn't see as many when it came to pumpkins, maybe a little bit more in the Northeast, but not as much. Most of these were apples. All right, so I have an example from the Corona Daily Independent. This is from October of 1965, and they have a really interesting and really good-looking recipe for apple dumplings. So apple dumplings were very popular. And so I thought this was kind of a fun thing to do. This article, the article was called Rosalie Reports. So it's kind of an ongoing food type of column that Rosalie Marabella would write. And so the title of it was No More Excuse with Autumn. So she actually does have a pumpkin bread recipe, which looks pretty standard to the pumpkin recipe that honestly I make today. Your usual spices, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the cloves, that type of thing. So I was really surprised when I looked at it. It's not really that different than what I make than the recipe I have. And to be truthful, I don't know where I got my recipe from. My mother gave it to me, and so there we have it. With the apple dumplings, now I've never made apple dumplings. I don't know if you have or not, Ashley.
I have not, but I feel like they're like a state fair type of food, where like back in the Midwest when I lived there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think probably why I haven't made them is just because I think it would be, they just seem a little time intensive, quite frankly. And so I also, because they're a deep fried food, and I don't like to deep fry things. So one, I don't really like to eat deep fried foods, but the other part of it is I don't actually like working with that much hot oil. It just makes me a little nervous, quite frankly. Yeah. But this is a pretty classic recipe for the apple dumplings, like you might have, say, at a state fair or something like that, with the sugar, water, cinnamon, nutmeg, butter, apples. That's pretty much what we would do today, I think. And then, of course, with your dumpling just being, your shortening and your flour and your leavening agents, a little bit of milk. And so, yeah, that's cooking up the apples and making up your dough, and then deep frying, filling your dough with your apples, pinching those little things shut, and deep frying them. So I'm sure they were lovely.
Oh, I'm sure they were
lovely.
Maybe it's like a little vanilla ice cream. Like, I'm not usually a put everything a la mode, but like with apple desserts, I feel like apple pie, I love like a little ice cream with it. I feel like that would be probably pretty good on there.
Yeah. And my guess is too, you could probably just bake them as well. You could probably, if you tweak the recipe, you could bake it so that you're not. And that's what I've done over the years. Again, I don't use a deep fryer in my house because it scares me. So yeah, absolutely. But again, very traditional types of foods and which I thought was fun as we came up with this idea about what were they making in the year that we were born. These are foods that actually, you still kind of make today. The pumpkin bread, the apple dumplings, probably baked today as opposed to deep fried, but hey, they're still around.
That does have me wondering if there would be like a way to make it in an air fryer, because that would certainly be
Oh,
easier
that's an
than deep
interesting.
frying.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, Ashley. There's an
Maybe for science, I mean, maybe I'll have to try. I do have an air fryer, and I
I
am
do
getting
too, but
hungry talking about this stuff.
I'm gonna let you try it and then tell me how to do it. Actually, because
Fair, fair.
somehow I don't think my grandmother had an air fryer to make these
Yeah,
dumplings with.
no.
So tell me a little bit about what was being made in the fall of 1982.
So 82, I actually did come across a good amount of pumpkin items, but the first example that really stood out to me was from Lawrence Journal World in October of 1982. They had a recipe for, it says zucchini cake and autumn treat. And I thought that was interesting because usually we think of zucchini as kind of a summer thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a lovely black and white photo of this, which we really can't tell what it is, but it says chocolate zucchini cake as the caption. And I love the way that the kind of introductory paragraphs are for these recipes in a lot of the older newspapers. This one says, "Few culinary pleasures equal turning out the perfect cake, one that you've, quote, this is in quotes, made from scratch to serve to family and friends. Although chocolate layer cake is a perennial favorite, why not extend your baking cakes to cakes which feature the season's bounty of apples, pumpkins, zucchini, and nuts?" Zucchini is a summer thing, right?
To me, that's a summer
Yeah.
thing. The only thing, unless it's something that they have left over, what made
Like
me
too
think about
much
it
from the summer.
too much of it, because you hear about jokes about here down in this area where I live, about people, the people who had gardens and about their zucchini being plentiful, and they would and then they couldn't get rid of it because people didn't, they were tired and like they couldn't
Yeah.
give it away, so they would like drop it on people's front porch, ring the doorbell, and run. I don't know if that really ever happened, but that was kind of the
Uh,
joke, was like, kind of like, okay, ring the doorbell, here, have some zucchini and run, kind of thing.
yeah.
So I don't, but no, I would not have thought of that as being a fall type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've had zucchini bread, and that sounds,
Yeah, I
actually,
love
chocolate
zucchini bread.
zucchini
Yeah.
bread sounds really good, obviously, but it does. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that it's lumped in with all of the other things that do seem like fall to me. But it says the
Yeah.
chocolate zucchini cake baked in a bundt pan gets its moistness from zucchini and its unique flavor from chocolate, raisins, and nuts. Delicious, topped only with powdered sugar, it takes on a dressier look when frosted with a satiny chocolate glaze. And then it says, for an easy to prepare family supper cake or for TV snacking, mini chip apple snacking cake is another autumn treat, served warm from the oven or topped with a dollop of whipped cream and cinnamon. The combination of apples and chocolate ensure this will be a lunchbox favorite. I would take one of those in my lunchbox. But
Oh yes, and you had vegetables with it too. Maybe
it's a
that's
complete meal.
the whole. I don't know. Is that the?
Yeah. Well, and this article, like this particular page, is there's also a harvest pumpkin torte that's got a pumpkin filling and a chocolate glaze. There's some savory uh, items on this also, like some meatloaves and stuff. But there was one other article on just on this one page that stood out to me that I thought was really kind of fun. The headline of the article is "Proper time for invitation to brunch falls within, quote, reasonable hour guideline." And so there's a Q&A. It's like a Q&A. And one of the questions was the Funk and Wagnall's Cooks and Diners Dictionary defines brunch as, quote, an informal late morning meal containing breakfast and lunch. The book adds that Sunday brunch is a festive occasion frequently served buffet style and often with cocktails and champagne. I have often served what I call brunch at 1 p.m., and an acquaintance declares that I am wrong to speak of that meal as brunch. He says it then becomes lunch. What do you think? So this person is like, has beef with their friend. They're like, I need to prove them wrong. We're going to write into the experts at the Lawrence Journal World. And so their answer was, I take the word brunch to mean a fairly casual but indeed festive meal served midday at reasonable hours on Sundays or holidays or any other special day. The term, quote, reasonable hours is a highly subjective specification. I would invite guests for brunch, generally speaking, between the hours of noon and 1:30 p.m. If I invited them after that, I would probably invite them to a buffet. Many restaurants serve Sunday brunch between noon and 4 p.m., and this makes total sense to me largely because I am not doing the cooking. The whole argument is largely a question of semantics. If for some reason I wanted to invite guests to brunch at 3 in the afternoon, I would do it without feeling that I had violated a sacred law. I don't know why. This just really cracked me up. That this is an article. It's at the end of the Q&A. It says readers are invited to send questions about food and cooking techniques to Craig Claiborne, food editor at the New York Times. And then unfortunately unpublished questions cannot be answered individually. So I guess this is a New York Times thing that ran in various newspapers around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
I mean,
interesting.
it's
Well, I was just, I'm going to have to weigh in that brunch, 1 o'clock is lunch, brunch is before noon to me,
okay.
because I was told, and I was a kid, that brunch is like, because I remember being invited to a brunch, or my mother making a brunch, and I said, but what is brunch? And she says, well, it's not breakfast, but it's not lunch, it's brunch. So it's in between the two.
Yeah.
But
And
I'm
then
not going to argue with the New York Times, so we're just going to go,
and then there's dinner in between lunch and
I
dinner.
mean, if they're going to feed me, I'm not going to argue with what they want to call it, put it that way. But I would have,
one of the things that really struck me about this particular page in that Q&A section especially is this is kind of like what like blog comments or social media comments are these days, because one of the like addendums to this Q&A section, they said in response to a question as to where to buy rennet for cheese making, I pointed out one source that ships rennet at the cost of $3.50 for 4 tablets, plus $1.50 for shipping and handling. Numerous readers wrote to say that rennet under the trade name Junket is available in supermarkets at less than $1 for 12 tablets. On the box is a formula for making non-fat cheese at home. So it's like people were really taking this advice, going with it, finding things, and then taking the time to write in. And I feel like, people like my son's age, like he doesn't understand there wasn't this instant gratification. It's like these people are like writing a letter, they're mailing it, they're waiting for a response and for the newspaper to come out and see if their note got warranted a response. It's like kind of exciting, and I don't know, something about that delayed. It's not everything is instant gratification. I feel like it's just an interesting change.
Exactly. I think, I often talk about newspaper research and genealogy and family history, and that the newspaper was kind of their social media. Well, not kind of. The newspaper was their social media in many respects. This is how, unfortunately, how we tend to go onto social media to find out things. This is how they would do it as well. But, like you would have your society page in the newspaper, and that would give that, we're talking about recipes today in food, a lot of times we're looking for, what are our friends making? So we know what, I need some inspiration. So let me go see what my friends are making on Facebook or whatever. And, I think I'll try that. That looks pretty. And so, I can definitely see that parallel, I should say, not equivalent, but a parallel there.
Yeah. So what else was happening in 1965 in the fall?
So I found something that was a little interesting. So this was actually from the Austin Daily Herald. And again, October in 1965, and it was about cranberries. Now, cranberries colorful says, okay, hang on. The headline is "Cranberries Colorful in Surprise Dessert." Now, the reason I find this a little interesting, and this is talking about real cranberries as opposed to, like the cranberry stuff in a can. And I found this kind of an interesting thing because, growing up in the South, I don't know the first time I ever actually saw a real cranberry, like a whole cranberry. Cranberry was the cranberry sauce that came in the can. It had the ridges when you poked it out, like the jelly type thing. I mean, that's what we had. And then you had two kinds. You had the plain, the smooth, which I liked, or you had the, what did they call it? Anyway, the chunkier one, the one that had that had the bits in it. And so, you had two different kinds. And my mother would have to buy two because kids would not eat the stuff that had the other. We wanted the smooth, everybody else wanted the other. So anyway, more of the relish type thing. So I thought that was really interesting to see, to kind of, that they're playing this up. And this is actually an article kind of prepping for Thanksgiving, actually. And it's talking about a cranberry cheesecake recipe.
Oh,
Doesn't that sound?
that
And then there's a
sounds great.
cranberry wreath salad recipe. Now, the cranberry wreath salad, actually, it's a pineapple cranberry wreath, and we think of that. And that one actually does use the kind of the jellied cranberry sauce that we would buy. And we absolutely would see that hit in the grocery stores in the fall, even back then. And so, yeah, we're going to see a lot of that. But that's when we talk cranberries and cranberry relishes, cranberry sauces in the South, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the jelly type of sauce, or my favorite, cranberry cocktail juice. I don't know if that's what you call it, but I call it
oh,
juice.
like ocean
Cranberry
spray,
juice.
cranberry.
Yeah,
cocktail.
ocean spray. Yeah, yeah. Type thing.
Is
But
the wreath like shaped like a wreath?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You
Okay.
would make it like in a Jello mold.
Okay. In the 60s,
yeah.
No. A Jello mold in the 60s?
The Jello mold in the 60s. Yes, you guys can do the math on that one. I'm not even going to bother. It's like I tell my genealogy audiences, any of us can figure out when I was born in about 2 seconds. So, hey, that's what it, But yeah, but a cranberry cheesecake sounds pretty exotic to me, for that time period. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool thing that we wouldn't have expected to see as much, particularly in the Southern tables.
Do you know if, so you said that was from Austin. Do you know if that was a popular ingredient there? Or?
I was looking through. That's what I was just
because it feels very like New England kind of.
Yeah. It doesn't really indicate. I think it was more of a, reading the intro to the article, it says cranberries for Thanksgiving. Yes, inevitably. But how about using them in a dessert for a change? So it's kind of, I think, taking it and looking at it with a different eye on it, I think is really kind of what the point of the article is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't indicate that this is the article is written by Gaynor Maddox. It doesn't indicate that this is like an ongoing column. I'm not picking that up here, but definitely an interesting that they were pulling that up. So yeah. That would have been, but it would have been a special occasion type of food, I think.
Yeah. So. Well, and that's one of when you were saying it wasn't like a regular column, I didn't really understand or realize before we started doing these kind of deep dives to some of these older newspapers, I didn't really grasp how so many local newspapers were pulling from the same articles that were distributed. What's the word I'm looking for? Syndicated? Is that
syndicated?
The word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense because, I guess, would the author of the article be able to sell it for more, or would they get paid more since it's going to multiple outlets?
Yeah, I have no idea how that actually plays out, but that's absolutely something that when I'm teaching how to research ancestors and family history in newspapers, that's actually something I talk about is don't just stick with the local newspaper. It could be an event, if it was big enough, may have been picked up by a regional newspaper or a national newspaper. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at something. I was actually looking at the British Newspaper Archive recently, and I came across an article about, it was titled A Tennessee Vendetta, and it was describing events of a family feud that was happening in Tennessee.
Huh.
And this was in multiple British newspapers.
Wow.
And so it was it had, the family probably had some ties back, but at the same time, the point being, here is an event. And so maybe those local newspapers didn't survive in Tennessee, or maybe they're hard, a lot of times finding the local newspapers, it's easier than it used to be, but not every newspaper is digitized. But here are multiple accounts that have been picked up in multiple newspapers about something that was happening, 3,000 plus miles away.
Yeah.
So
maybe it was a slow news day absolutely. In Britain.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, wait, what? This is here? And so, yeah, it really opened my eyes and kind of drove home that point of making sure when I'm looking for family and genealogy type of research in the newspaper that I've got to expand beyond the local area.
Interesting.
That's kind of a different aside there from food, but definitely it kind of, we can start to see that borne out even in the food columns that we're looking at.
Yeah.
This episode of Passing the Plate is sponsored by Storied Book Recipes from Storied.
Hey Lisa, you know how recipes are about more than just food?
Absolutely. They're memories, traditions, and stories passed down through generations.
Exactly, and that's why we're excited to share Storied Book Recipes from Storied with Passing the Plate listeners. Storied Book Recipes isn't just a cookbook, it's a beautiful way to gather, preserve, and share your family's culinary traditions. It allows you to capture recipes along with the stories and the family photos behind them all in one place.
Imagine gifting a beautifully printed storied book to your loved ones, filled with recipes, memories, and family history. It's more than a book, it's a timeless connection. Storied.com allows you to build your family tree, discover historical records, and share your family's story with future generations.
It's such a great way to keep your family's food and recipe traditions alive, which is what we're all about here at Passing the Plate.
Visit storied.com/plate or use code PLATE to save 20% off your first storied book and create something your family will treasure forever. All right, Ashley, what's next from 1982?
So this one is from the Orland Park Star Herald, November 4th, 1982. And this, you were talking about pumpkin. You weren't coming across a lot of pumpkin. I found lots of pumpkin. And this article is titled "Country Classics Have Nutritional Plus." And it actually talks about pumpkin, how pumpkin has a natural rich endowment of vitamin A plus iron and other nutrients. And it tells you, capture the flavors of these old-time treats and create a few surprises with a beautiful bevy of new pumpkin recipes. They're bound to win praises as long as a country mile. So I'm not sure if a country mile is longer than a normal mile, but they have they have some really an interesting collection of recipes just on this one page. There's a creamy pumpkin ricotta pie that sounds like maybe it's kind of like a cheesecake. It's got eggs and ricotta and then a can of pumpkin, brown sugar, pumpkin pie spice, vanilla, evaporated milk, and a pastry shell, and then vanilla yogurt and pumpkin seeds for garnish, which I thought was an interesting garnish for this. There's a holiday pumpkin nog that's got vanilla ice cream, milk, a can of pumpkin pie mix, which is different than regular canned pumpkin because pumpkin pie mix, it has some seasonings and sweetness in it already. Then you have the optional 1 to 1.5 cups of white rum and some ground nutmeg. So that's your holiday pumpkin nog. There's also pumpkin eater donuts that sound delicious, and you toss them in, or you dip them into cinnamon sugar at the end if you would like. There's a health nut fruitcake, which it's interesting that it's called a health nut fruitcake when it's got quite a large amount of honey, and it's got orange juice in it, pitted dates, candied cherries. There's a lot of sweets in there, but there is a half a cup of quick cooking oats, so I guess that makes it healthy.
I would say, is there any brandy in it? This one?
Yeah, right. It sounds like a cocktail. Then there's a pumpkin gingerbread that I'm actually curious. I might try this one. Now, this one sounds more health nutty to me because this one contains a cup of wheat germ. So I thought that sounded interesting. And this one has a yogurt glaze to go on top of it. I actually might try making this recipe because it sounds interesting. Like, it sounds like a great combination. And I love that it has wheat germ in it. I don't know. To me, it just makes it sound a little different than what I've normally heard of.
I think it's interesting that you're seeing in those 1982 recipes a little more bent toward that yogurt sauce, incorporating wheat germ and oats into those recipes to make them a little healthier.
Yeah,
it really does kind of speak to the differences, 20 years later. Or so.
Yeah, because I know I remember from my childhood there was a lot of like exercise shows and Richard Simmons with the Deal Meal and the aerobics on PBS and all that stuff. So it is kind of funny or interesting, I guess, to see that they're incorporating it into very sweet desserts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's hit 1965 one last time. What else do you have for us?
All right, one last time. I'm over in Athens at the Athens Messenger. from October of 1965. This is Athens, Ohio. And this is actually an applesauce cake. So we're right back into the apples. Obviously, apples were abundant throughout. And this looks really good. And again, this is a recipe that, to be honest, I think we still see around today. It may have a different name, but your usual flour saw. It has raisins or chopped dates. This particular editor said she prefers the dates to this in this recipe. But again, margarine. So it does call for stick butter or oleo, because
Oh,
I think that was
yes.
starting to come around.
I remember my
Sugar,
grandma using that. Yeah.
yep. Sugar, cinnamon, ground cloves, an egg, baking soda, water, and applesauce. So this isn't all that different than what the cakes I see around today that we would see for an applesauce cake. So again, mixing either dates or raisins. And I personally would like the raisins, but I would probably not use a ton of them either. So that's just personal
And it's
preference here.
probably nice and tender from the applesauce.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So you can either, they say, serve it warm or cold, plain or with whipped cream, scoops of ice cream. We're not going for healthy things here, guys.
No
So
wheat
I'm
germ.
sure, right. No wheat germ in this one, guys. And so I'm sure it's a delicious recipe, pretty standard, basic applesauce cake. But I'm curious, Ashley, whenever I have made something and either a substituted applesauce for part of the oil
Hmm.
to be a little more healthy, or something that would be like an applesauce cake, the texture over time tends to get a little sticky or tacky. Is
Ah,
that normal? Is that something in the cooking process, or is that just because of the high moisture content?
I'm not sure, but I would think that it has to do with the high moisture content. And I feel like certain baked goods do better when they're stored in the refrigerator for
Hmm.
stuff like that. Yeah, especially if you got like sticky things in there too. You got like raisins and dates and stuff like that. I feel like that might just tend to get that way. Um, but you could always, like, if you found yourself with a piece of cake that you wanted it, that you thought it was like a little too moist, you could always, like, if you had a toaster oven or like a low oven, just to kind of like dry it out a little. Not that you want to dry a cake, but I don't know.
No, but my mom used to do that. She would
Yeah.
like something like this, or like a piece of pound cake, because she
Mm-hmm.
liked pound cake. But she'd pop it in the toaster and
Yeah.
have it with her coffee.
Yeah. Then you get it like a
But
little warm and you
yeah,
got like,
toast it up a
yeah.
little bit.
Mm.
So absolutely. So yeah, so this is again a recipe that's a pretty classic
Yeah.
recipe. I'm sure there are variations of it, but kind of your basic staple when it comes to an applesauce cake recipe. So
Right.
anyway, I'm going to throw it back to you, Ashley, one last time, back to 1982.
All right. We are at the Burlington Daily Times News for October 13th, 1982. And this is not specifically fall themed, but I really liked that this article is included. It seems like it's a column that is published frequently. It's called Recipe Swap by S.E. Norwood, Family Living editor. And so it lists there's a recipe for banana pudding, black forest cake. There's two black forest cakes actually. There's one of them has a cherry filling, and then the other one has a chocolate cream frosting and a filling that also has cherries. And then it ends with a request. So the request says, "We have only one recipe request today, but it's a big one. Pat Jones called to ask for a recipe for Brunswick stew. She wants to make about 25 quarts for the freezer. Readers who will share a Brunswick stew recipe or any favorite are invited to send them to the Family Living Daily Times News," and they give the address. Anyone who wishes to request a recipe may call Family Living and then the telephone number, and the request will be published. So this article is specifically like, it's not like a missed connections, like I saw you here and did you remember me? But it's kind of like this is people putting out a specific request. So the Black Forest cakes, I guess, maybe were a request from someone else. Let's see. The article starts with, it says, Dot Langford was responsible for the banana pudding served at the Lebanon Church Harvest Festival and is happy to share her recipe with the reader who requested it last week. We also received several other versions, which will be shared in a later column. And then there's the quote from the person who sent it. This recipe was given to me by an aunt at a family gathering, and since then I have seen it printed in a local cookbook. Mrs. Langford wrote, I would love to share it with your readers and hope they enjoy it and have as many compliments as I have had since I've been making it. It's quick and easy, and the sour cream seems to keep the bananas from turning dark. It keeps well in the refrigerator. I make this as one large pudding for church suppers or family gatherings. I also make it in 2 or 3 smaller dishes to share with others, or the recipe may be divided. So I just thought it was kind of cool that it's like their way of sharing family recipes or recipes that were popular with, the general public. I don't know.
I think that accounts maybe why there are 2 Black Forest cakes of the different versions. I love it. It's basically a recipe swap.
Yeah, exactly.
Article,
that's what it's called, recipe swap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
not just a clever name. No,
not just a clever name. Sorry, guys, I missed that one. But yeah, I like that. That's a really cool. And I've seen that in other newspapers. Not when I was specifically looking for those kinds of things, but I have seen where, it's kind of a swap, or people are writing in asking for certain recipes. So I think that's a really cool way of doing it.
It's a fun way to, like, I don't know. It's like a community bulletin board kind of thing, but, and the Black Forest cake, actually, this was Ann Horner shared 2 recipes for Black Forest cake. One is a simple version, much easier and faster than the traditional cake, but very pretty and very good. She wrote her traditional version will be shared later, and then they give that. So the simple one uses a chocolate cake mix and apple pie spice. And then the other one is, flour, butter, sugar, all that stuff from scratch. So just kind of interesting way to share recipes. And I'd be curious if anybody who was, reading the recipe sections of newspapers back in the day, they actually submitted anything ever to these or made anything that they found. Yeah.
I don't know if, like, my mom or my grandmother ever did. I mean, they definitely cut things out of newspapers because I have those, little yellow things that I've scanned and preserved, but definitely would cut recipes out of newspapers and magazines as well.
Yeah.
Certainly. I think looking back, just kind of as we kind of were trying to take snapshots of what was popular and trending during the years that we were born, from the 1960s, it's still pretty classic. I know that was the one thing that I really noted, is that while they might try some new things, it was still a lot of just your real basic types of recipes. Your basic applesauce cake, your apple dumpling, those types of things, the pumpkin bread, which are still things that I see today. Pretty much, you still see those recipes, maybe not exact, but tweaks, but still pretty much those basic recipes you're still going to see make the rounds again during the holidays. But I do think, from what I was hearing with yours in 1982, you're seeing more of that health consciousness come into it. So we're seeing, and I think today we'll probably see more of a blend of the 2.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely kind of how I try to cook, is like, try to keep it healthy to a point, but like we're still enjoying food. We're not like depriving, but I'm also not throwing in a pound of butter and just for no reason.
You're not making healthy fruitcake, huh?
I don't think I'm not really a fruitcake fan.
That's like fruitcake. I'm never going to say it's healthy, but I like fruitcake.
Like let's
but
not.
If I eat it, I know what I'm eating.
It's like if I'm making fried chicken, it's fried chicken. It's not like
Exactly.
Let's just call
We're
it
not here to debate health foods, that's for sure. Anyway. All right. Well, you can find the show notes for this episode at passingtheplate.org/71.
That's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
It's been a pleasure sharing these stories and flavors with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect with our past, present, and future.
So keep sharing your meals, keep passing those plates, and keep creating memories that will last a lifetime. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.